Welcome back. Today I want to talk about amplification, specifically power amplifiers. But before I do so, let me talk a bit about my current setup. I have the Macintosh MA6600, which is an integrated amplifier, and the T+A DAC200, and then the Holo Audio Red as a streamer, and then the Piega Coax 711 that you can see here in the background. And the rest you can see. I always take the wrong side. You can see here. And it's a very nice setup. It sounds really well, but I think that the Macintosh likely is the limiting factor in this setup. I think it lacks power and control. Why do I say so? When I have other people here to present my system, some of them maybe don't have the best hearing anymore and would like to listen at louder volumes than what I like, and I listen usually max at around 85 decibels with, I don't know, maybe a few peaks a bit upwards to the 85, but not necessarily too much. But I've had one listener here that liked it more towards the 90, maybe even above. And then, okay, I plugged my ears for a couple of minutes to demonstrate the system. But on that occasion, we drove the Macintosh into the power guard multiple times. And I think that this is due to the impedance of the loudspeakers. And even though the Macintosh is by no means a weak amplifier, it delivers 200 watts into the speakers, irrespective of the load. So into, I don't know, 8 ohms, 4 ohms, and so on. But as said, we managed to drive the Macintosh into the power guard. So I wanted to try something else. And I always thought about mono power amplifiers, and there's two reasons for that. First one is the speakers here are 4 meters apart, and I would love to move my electronics. I always take the wrong side. Move my electronics here to one side of the room to then really have nothing except for the few plants that I have in between the speakers. But in order to do so, I would need to have very long speaker cables, roughly 8 meters of length I would need. And I'm not sure that this is beneficial. I will try that. I have a Elephant 425 from Sommer here that I will play around with a bit to see if the 8 meters would actually do harm to the sound. I'll find out. But there's another reason, and that is more of a technical reason. If you think about amplifiers, an integrated amplifier is a one-box solution, so everything's inside this one box: the preamplifier, the power amplifier, and then the power supply that is required to drive both of them. The more you share, the more likely it is that you have crosstalk between the two channels, which you don't want, because it has sonic disadvantages for your stereo signal, stereo image specifically. And you could use the metaphor of maybe a double bed. You know? And let's take the integrated amplifier is the water bed. One partner already sleeps, the other one jumps into the bed, the mattress starts to shake, and the other one wakes up and is likely not happy to be disturbed in his well-deserved sleep, his or her well-deserved sleep. And then you could put more and more effort into building such an integrated amplifier, and many manufacturers do that. So you separate more and more components and make them really distinct components for each channel, down to the point where manufacturers then call that a full mono setup in that one box integrated amplifier solution. But most of the time, with a few exceptions, at least the power supply is still a shared unit. And then that could be compared to, I don't know, separate mattresses where you really have separate frames also in the bed. But if you sleep in the same room and one makes weird noises, is snoring at night, the other partner may still wake up, and then you're getting kicked out into another room. And that would then be, in my metaphor, the mono amplifiers. So they're really in separate boxes, separate power supply, separate everything. And then all you need is 2 cables that bring the signal to the mono amplifiers. And then you should eliminate most, if not all, of the crosstalk, except for what might happen in a preamplifier. So mono amplifiers is what I wanted, what I was looking for, and the M200s of T+A were the ones that I chose to start my investigation with. Why is that? I know them already from a number of demos. I've heard them with Gauda Acoustics, Cassiano, Capello. I've heard them with a number of Dali speakers. I've heard them with Splendor. I can't remember the name of the speaker brand relatively recently. And I must say, I always liked what I heard from what I could think is the sonic signature, so to say, of those M200s. So I borrowed them from my dealer. But before I now tell you what I heard and if I liked it or not, I want to give you some tech specs which you might also be interested in. The T+A M200s are, as said, the mono amplifiers from the T200 series of T+A, and they use a high frequency sine wave switch mode power supply, then a high voltage preamp and purify Eigentakt power amplifier modules. And with that setup, they can produce 420 watts into 4 ohms and 210 watts into 8 ohms, which I think is a substantial power output. But then the frequency that they produce is extremely linear. There's a nice graph on the T+A website available, and I would recommend you take a look. There's also some nice pictures there. It's basically flat, especially in the range between 20 hertz and 20 kilohertz. It's perfectly flat. But it's plus minus 3 dB between 1 hertz and 60 kilohertz is what T+A states. What is clear? I can't think of the English word at the moment, but let's call it noise. It's probably wrong. But the intermodulations and what's harming the signal is below 0.002%, which is extremely low. And then the amplification factor is 37, or it's 31.4 decibels of gain, which is also a good gain. But for me, the key tech spec, and you will hear in a minute why that is really the damping factors. There are two settings for the damping factor. There's a low and a high setting that the M200s offer. And the low setting is above 70. Just for comparison, the Macintosh offers a damping factor of 67, and if you go into the high mode of the M200s, it's above 800, which is a significantly or very, very high, significantly high damping factor. And what the damping factor describes is how well the amplifier can deal with signals that the loudspeaker brings back due to mass effects of the drivers. What that means is you have a bass driver which has a certain weight, a certain mass, and this is being moved due to the signal. And this doesn't just stop immediately, but due to the momentum that the mass has, still moves even though the signal is already over. And this movement without a signal produces electric effects back into the amplifier. And the damping factor basically describes how well the amplifier can deal with that and how quickly it can make the loudspeaker stop the movement of the membrane. And if that has an effect or not, I will let you know in a second. There might have been also an alternative from the 200 series, which is the A200. That's the stereo power amplifier out of that series, which produces 250 watts into 4 ohms or 125 watts into 8 ohms, and then basically has the same specs as the M200s. But honestly, my gut feeling was that this would be too weak of an option for my setup here in this relatively large room. But I think this was enough tech blah blah. I guess you wanna now know what I heard and if I liked it or not, and I will let you know. So I fired up the M200s once I had them here, and what I can tell you is I was shocked. Why is that? Well, I started, as I always do, with a bit of lower volume and then cranked it up over time. But even at lower volumes, there was a more substantial, especially deep bass, more substance, I want to say. And what I mean with that is you felt more of the bass. Yes, of course, if you have a loudspeaker that's capable of reproducing bass, you can hear it. But if I listen to a bass-rich track, I want to feel the bass as well. Here in the chest, you know what I mean, right? Especially when you've ever heard, I don't know, a big bass drum out of an orchestra or a bass guitar or something like that. You know what I mean, right? This is something you do not only hear, but you also feel in your body. And that's what I want when I reproduce music on my hi-fi setup. But not only the bass improved, but also the attack. And what I mean with that is the micro and macro dynamics, how quickly the loudspeaker is able to change the volumes of a certain instrument, right? When you have something all of a sudden hitting a cymbal or a bass drum or a small bell, whatever it may be, this is super quickly there and then off it goes. And this I really enjoyed, I can really say. And also, in terms of stereo image, stage, this got a bit wider, extended even further beyond the speakers. And then also the center image were even improved. It was not bad, and make no mistake, the Macintosh is a really good amplifier, but the M200s did an even better job there. But also instruments sounded more realistic. Let's take a guitar, for example. It was more full-bodied, I want to say. It sounded more lively, more natural. A guitar or a violin or whatever you take is a wooden box that vibrates and that then puts out sonic waves. And it sounded more like that than a artificial reproduction of the latter. And I like that very much, but also cymbals, for example, they sounded better. It seemed like they could vibrate more freely and it just sounded more natural. I can tell you why that is in the cymbals, but especially in the bass, I ascribe that to the damping factor, this very high damping factor, and I most of the time use the high setting because I liked it better of those M200s. And when I went back to the Macintosh and I tried that a number of times during the test, the sound was more attached to the speakers, made the speakers disappear less, and also the substance that I described before just decreased. Now the question you may want to ask is, what's next? Did I buy the M200s? And what I can say is not yet. And I also will give you the reason why that is. The M200s were the first mono power amplifiers that I tried in here, and I don't want to buy the first things. I really like them, and I'm really tempted to pull the trigger and buy them because they're excellent mono amplifiers. I like them a lot, and there would be also a lot of convenience that they can bring to the system in terms of usability. But I want to try more, and this is where you can become part of the equation, because I'm wondering, what are your ideas? Which mono amplifiers that I described my system in the beginning of the video you think might be a match to my system? And then I will see if I find a dealer here in the area that A, has the brand, and B, is then also willing to give them to me as a loaner here to test them in my system. I'm really curious. I can't promise that I will follow each and every recommendation, but I really hope to get some interesting ones. So I urge you, if you have an idea, put it in the comments below. If you, during the process, also feel like giving me a thumbs up with a small channel, that certainly wouldn't hurt. If you want to subscribe, also would be appreciated. I'm doing the English video just for you, so you know, and I would love to see some appreciation for that. Yeah, and with that, thank you very much and see you next time.